In the previous episode, we talked briefly about the rhythm of English, which is created by the combination of strong and weak beats, and then we learned about stressed and unstressed syllables. In this episode, we will study stress in more detail. So, let's get started. Instead of just two levels, stressed and unstressed, there are actually three levels. Primary stress, which is what I called stressed in the previous video, secondary stress, and zero stress, which is what I called unstressed in the previous video. A syllable with primary stress is the loudest, the highest, and the longest. By highest, I mean the pitch of the syllable. A syllable with secondary stress is quite loud, quite high, and quite long. Finally, a syllable with zero stress is quiet, low, and short. Words with two syllables only have one syllable with primary stress and one syllable with zero stress. Words with three syllables either have one syllable with primary stress and two syllables with zero stress, or one syllable with primary stress, one syllable with secondary stress, and one syllable with zero stress. Words with four or more syllables almost always have one syllable with primary stress, one syllable with secondary stress, and more than one syllable with zero stress. Let's look at some examples of words with three syllables. Firstly, the word banana. The second syllable is the loudest, the highest, and the longest, whereas the first and third syllables are equally quiet, low, and short. Therefore, this word has two syllables with zero stress and one syllable with primary stress. Here is another example. The word emphasize. The first syllable has primary stress because it is the loudest, the highest, and the longest. The second syllable has zero stress because it is the least loud, the least high, and the least long. Or, in other words, it is quiet, low, and short. Finally, the third syllable has secondary stress because it is quite loud, quite high, and quite long. However, it is less loud, less high, and less long than the first syllable, which has primary stress. Now it is your turn. I would like you to think about the word imagination. Firstly, say this word a few times in order to feel the rhythm. After that, decide which syllables have primary, secondary, and zero stress. Please pause the video while you do this. Okay, I will share my answers with you. When I say imagination, ne feels like the strongest syllable. By strongest, I mean it is the loudest, the highest, and the longest. Therefore, ne has primary stress. The quietest, lowest, and shortest are I, j, and shun. So, these have zero stress. Finally, when I say ma, the level of loudness, highness, and length feel in between primary and zero stress. So, ma has secondary stress. Now, please answer these questions. Please pause the video while you decide, and continue when you are ready. Here are the answers. Before we move on, do you remember that, in episode 2 of this chapter, I said that the rhythm of language is similar to the rhythm of music? Well, a typical music pattern is one group of 4 beats. In this pattern, the first beat has primary stress, the third beat has secondary stress, and the second and fourth beats have 0 stress. Like this. I hope this can help you understand the rhythm of English if you are confused. Regarding the 3 levels of stress, we can see this more clearly if we look at pictures of speech. To create this picture, someone speaks into a microphone and the computer draws a representation of their speech. Through this, we can see the loudness and the length of each syllable. This picture is the English phrase growth and prosperity. We can see that growth, which is one word and one syllable, is long because it is wide, and loud because it is high. Pe is also long and loud. Therefore, both of these syllables have primary stress. Pros and ri are quite long and quite loud, so they have secondary stress. Finally, and t are short and very quiet. Therefore, they have 0 stress. You can also see that the syllables are not equally spaced. There is a long gap between growth and, but the 3 syllables pe, ri, ti are very close together. This is a great example of English rhythm. Remember that, in English rhythm, some syllables are stressed, whereas others are unstressed. Also, some syllables have large gaps between them, whereas others do not. In contrast, the rhythm of Chinese is very different. In Chinese, almost every syllable has the same stress, so almost every syllable has the same length, highness, and loudness. Therefore, in the picture on the screen, for the Chinese phrase 鲜艳多木, every character is evenly spaced and has approximately the same loudness. So, you can see how Chinese and English rhythms are different. Before we continue, I want to add one more thing. Even though I said that most syllables in Chinese are stressed, actually 5% of syllables in Chinese are unstressed. This is what we call the unstressed tone in standard Chinese. You can see the difference in these pictures. The left picture is yi yuan. Each syllable has the same strength. However, for the right picture, 觉得, the second syllable is definitely weaker than the first. In fact, for some Chinese words, there are 2 meanings, which depend on whether the second syllable is stressed. Here are some examples. Firstly, 运气, 运气. The first is an adjective and a noun, meaning lucky and luck. The second is a verb, and it means to direct your strength to a part of the body. Secondly, 对头, 对头. The first means enemy, whereas the second is an adjective meaning normal or correct. Thirdly, 孙子, 孙子. The first means grandson, whereas the second is the name of an ancient Chinese philosopher. Finally, 老子, 老子. The first is an informal word for father, whereas the second is the name of another ancient Chinese philosopher. So, in each of the four pairs, you can hear that the second syllable is weaker than the first syllable, and it is also weaker than when it is pronounced on its own. So, in conclusion, stress is essential in English, but you can also see that it is very important in a few Chinese words, because stress can change the meaning of the word. Going back to stress in English, sometimes we will need to use the IPA to write a word. When we do this, it is possible to show the syllables with primary and secondary stress. For primary stress, we put a short vertical line at the top before the stressed syllable. For example, wrapping. For secondary stress, we put a short vertical line at the bottom before the stressed syllable. For example, pronunciation. There is not a symbol for zero stress. However, a dot can be used to separate syllables. For example, pronunciation. You can use this when it is difficult to hear where the syllables begin and end. For example, ice cream and ice cream. We can represent the three levels of stress using a simple system of lines and dots. We use a long line for primary stress, a short line for secondary stress, and a dot for zero stress. Let's use the word emphasize as an example. The first syllable is the strongest, so it has primary stress. The second syllable has the reduced vowel so it has zero stress. The third syllable has the full vowel I, so it must be stressed. Because it is less stressed than the first syllable, it has secondary stress. Therefore, the stress pattern is a long line, a dot, and a short line. Please pause the video now to examine the other three stress patterns. Now, please answer these questions. Please pause the video while you decide, and continue when you are ready. Here are the answers. Now, let's do some exercises. In our first exercise, I will say 20 pairs of words. In each word, decide which syllable has primary stress. 1. Operate, operation. 2. Person, personality. 3. National, nationality. 4. Subject, subjective. 5. Industry, industrial. 6. Document, documentation. 7. Major, majority. 8. Incident, incidental. 9. Continent, continental. 10. Simplify, simplification. 11. Occupy, occupation. 12. Product, production. 13. Beauty, beautification. 14. Converse, conversation. 15. Photograph, photographic. 16. Object, objective. 17. Qualify, qualification. 18. Confident, confidential. 19. Educate, education. 20. Nominate, nomination. Here are the answers. In the final exercise, I will say 10 sentences which describe a job or activity. After each sentence, I will then say the word which is the name of the job or activity that I said in the sentence. After I say this word, I would like you to say it. In the name of the job or activity, decide which syllable is stressed. Pay attention to the stress, because the stress is different from the original word. I play music. What am I? I'm a musician. 2. I study grammar. What am I? I'm a grammarian. 3. I study history. What am I? I'm a historian. 4. I do technical work. What am I? I'm a technician. 5. I work in a library. What am I? I'm a librarian. 6. I work in politics. What am I? I'm a politician. 7. I make people beautiful. What am I? I'm a beautician. 8. I fix electrical appliances. What am I? I'm an electrician. 9. I take photographs. What am I? I'm a photographer. 10. I only eat vegetables. What am I? I'm a vegetarian. Here are the answers. This is the end of episode 3 in chapter 2. Thanks for watching.